Did you know that horses once went extinct? Or that crocodiles are actually older than the dinosaurs? Also, there's an animal alive right now that's older than trees. We'll start with horses.
Horses are a big part of American culture. However, horses have a long history that includes evolving, going extinct, and then being reintroduced. The whole horse family started in North America about 55 million years ago with a small multi-toed ancestor called Eohippus. And as the North American continent became cooler and drier over time, these ancient horses adapted to survive on the expanding vast plains. They grew larger, developed high-crowned teeth for grinding tough grasses, and eventually evolved into single-toed, hooved animals. Before disappearing from their homeland, some of these modern horses migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into Asia and Europe. There, their lineage was eventually domesticated by early human civilizations, securing their survival and cementing them as one of the most important animals in human history. Meanwhile, back home, the North American populations went completely extinct near the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, due to a mix of climate change and hunting, which rendered the continent entirely horseless for thousands of years. But in the late 1400s and early 1500s, the Spanish would make their way to North America to find a direct western sea route to Asia for lucrative spice trade, and what they brought along with them were horses. And they essentially reintroduced horses right back to where they had originally came from. The domestic cat. The domestic cat has been living alongside human beings for around 10,000 years now, and in that time, unlike the dog, they've barely changed at all. If you compare a domestic cat of today to an ancient wild cat, you'll see almost no difference between the two. To put this into perspective, if you compare a dog to a wolf, you will see 15,000 years worth of drastic results caused by selective breeding. Humans chose dogs and domesticated them for multiple purposes, like hunting, guarding territory, herding livestock, and pulling sleds. This human intervention shaped them over generations into hundreds of different breeds. We essentially turned an apex predator, the wolf, into everything from a 150-pound mastiff built for war to a 4-pound chihuahua that fits in a purse. The main reason humans actively bred dogs but left cats alone comes down to utility and diet. Dogs are omnivores. They can survive on our leftovers, and since they are naturally pack animals, they have an innate desire to please a leader, making them easy to train for specific tasks. Cats, on the other hand, are obligate carnivores. They must eat meat to survive. Ancient humans simply couldn't afford to waste precious meat feeding a pack of companion cats. Which brings us to the twist. Humans did not domesticate the cat. The cat domesticated itself. About 10,000 years ago, when humans began farming and storing grain, it started attracting massive waves of rodents like mice and rats. Naturally, these rodents attracted the African wildcat. The wildcats that happened to be comfortable enough around human settlements had access to a non-stop, endless buffet of food, so those specific cats stayed. When scientists mapped the domestic cat genome and compared it to the African wildcat, they found almost no significant structural differences. The only real genetic divergence shows up in genes tied to aggression, fear response, and reward-seeking behaviors. Hippos. Did you know that the name hippopotamus means river horse? This name comes from their semi-aquatic nature of being found over freshwater habitats. It comes from the Greek word hippos, meaning horse, and potamos, meaning river. However, hippos could not be further from the horse. They're more closely related to whales and dolphins than horses. Scientists believe that hippos, whales, and dolphins shared a common ancestor around 55 million years ago. This connection explains their semi-aquatic lifestyle and some of their adaptations for life in water, such as having their eyes, ears, and nose placed over the top of their skull, very much like a crocodile. They can spend up to 16 hours a day submerged in water and can hold their breath for an impressive 6 minutes at a time. They can also close their ears and nostrils to prevent water from entering. Despite being semi-aquatic, these animals are not that great of swimmers. They have semi-webbed feet adapted for an aquatic lifestyle, but these big boys do not swim. They walk underwater. Speaking of underwater, hippos also give birth underwater. Hippos are also one of the most dangerous wild animals ever. In Africa, they are more fatal to humans than lions or crocodiles. They can open their massive jaws nearly 150 degrees and have massive tusks that can grow up to 20 inches long. Their tusks are made of the same ivory as that of an elephant. Since its ivories didn't naturally yellow over time, it was historically highly prized and was even used to make some of George Washington's false teeth. Hippos also have a natural sunscreen. This is a reddish, oily secretion, often called blood sweat, which protects their skin from the sun's harsh rays and has antibacterial properties that prevent infections. Despite being so dangerous, hippos are not meat eaters. In fact, they are one of the largest land-based herbivores in the world. Hippos consume up to 80 pounds of grass in one feeding session. There are two species of hippopotamus, the common hippopotamus, found across sub-Saharan Africa, and the pygmy hippopotamus, which is much smaller and native to West Africa. While the common hippo can weigh up to 7,000 pounds, pygmy hippos rarely exceed 600 pounds. Before we get into the next, please drop a like, and if you like my content, consider subscribing as well. I'm trying to get to 100 subs by this month. Crocodiles. What most people do not realize is that the crocodile is actually an OG of planet Earth. They are actually older than the first dinosaurs to ever walk the land. Crocodiles are 240 million years old, putting them comfortably in the late Triassic period, which is exactly when the first dinosaurs started to appear. They shared the planet for 175 million years. They watched the dinosaurs go from small, marginal animals competing with everything else in the Triassic to the dominant life forms on Earth through the entire Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Of course, crocs back then didn't look like the ones we know now. They were small, fast, land-running animals. Over time, they moved toward the water, got lower and flatter, developed armor-like scales, and then they got absolutely enormous. The Sarcosuchus, which paleontologists nicknamed supercroc, was 9 to 10 meters long. The Deinosuchus was even bigger, pushing 12 meters. Then, 66 million years ago, the asteroid hit. All non-avian dinosaurs were gone. 75% of all life on Earth was gone. But the crocodile was not gone. It sat through the impact, the years without sunlight, the complete collapse of the food chains that had sustained the largest animals that had ever lived, and came out the other side. Not because it was the biggest or the most powerful, but because of a very specific set of qualities it had developed over millions of years. A slow metabolism that lets it go months without eating, and in extreme cases, years. And unlike the warm-blooded dinosaurs, crocodiles are cold-blooded. They didn't need to spend extra energy trying to maintain temperature, and if food ran out, they can slow their heart rate down, sit perfectly still at the bottom of a river, and survive over a year on a single meal. And at number 1 on our list is an animal that is older than the dinosaurs, older than the rings of Saturn, and even older than trees. What's even crazier is that this animal is still alive today. What is it, you may ask? It's sharks. We know for a fact that sharks are older than the dinosaurs, as fossil evidence reveals that the earliest shark ancestors first appeared in the oceans around 450 million years ago during the Ordovician period. In contrast, the earliest dinosaurs didn't emerge until the Triassic period, which was around 230 million years ago. The earliest shark ancestors were already swimming through Earth's oceans roughly 450 million years ago, while the first true trees did not appear on land until around 385 to 390 million years ago. Even the rings of Saturn are believed to have formed around 100 million years ago. This means sharks had a head start of roughly 60 million years on trees, and since their first appearance, sharks have also miraculously survived all 5 of Earth's major mass extinction events, including the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. Of course, sharks back then did not look like the sharks we know today. In fact, we don't have many fossils of these early sharks because their skeletons were made of cartilage instead of bone. Since cartilage rarely fossilizes, most of what we know comes from isolated teeth and a handful of exceptionally preserved specimens. These early sharks were relatively small and simple, and they hadn't yet developed many of the specialized features seen in modern sharks. Then, around 380 million years ago, sharks evolved into forms such as Cladocellaceae. It was one of the first sharks to resemble the streamlined body shape we associate with modern sharks. It had a torpedo-shaped body, a forked tail, and a mouthful of sharp, multicusped teeth. But then, evolution took a weird turn. A few tens of millions of years later came the Stethocanthus, nicknamed the ironing board shark. It had a bizarre anvil-shaped structure on its back and head covered in tooth-like scales, which scientists believe may have been used to intimidate or fend off predators or attract mates. And around 320 million years ago came the Xenocanthus, a shark with a long eel-like body that lived in freshwater rivers and swamps rather than the oceans. But it was during the Jurassic period, beginning around 200 million years ago, that sharks really started to take on their modern forms. New groups appeared with more advanced jaws, improved swimming abilities, and body plans that would prove incredibly successful. And by the time the dinosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago, sharks had already evolved into forms that would look surprisingly familiar to us today. I'm gonna wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you learned something new today. If you'd like a detailed explanation into any one specific animal, or if you'd like a detailed breakdown on any other animal, drop it in the comments and I'll be sure to check it out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.